Hey guys, what's going on? So I've had a bunch of requests for kind of understanding how Bone Spirit works, what makes Bone Spirit tick, and how all the pieces fit together. So I want to start by kind of talking about how um, the skills work, and then go into how uh, the gear works, and then just kind of general gameplay on how that works. So if we look at the gear first, and again, this is the tanky version. Uh, Videos out for that. You can slot in this instead of the Doombringer, lose a little bit of HP and pick up a little bit of damage. But for what we're purposes of right now, I'm just going to talk about the things that make the build tick. So first and foremost, the entire build is centered around this item here, the Banished Lord's Talisman. With Bone Spirit being designated as a core skill now, this benefits directly by every single cast of Bone Spirit. In Bone Spirit, we want the max essence anyway because of how the gear or the skills itself work. So going through the skills real quick, Bone Splinters is there just to get to our next one, but buffing that does buff the splinters on the boots, which we'll go through. We want max essence, so we're just dumping as much max essence as we can into this build. More damage from core skills, and we don't care about essence cost. So we actually get a plus from this with no negative, which is fantastic. And the reason we don't get a negative for this is we're not actually um, costing these skills. We're just consuming the essence of the skill, which is two different mechanics. Um, Skeletal Warrior Mastery is to keep the guys alive, and we've got some into the Paragon board. But it's very important to keep these four minions alive. They are going to do a couple things for us. First, they're giving us the Corpse Gen. And as you see, it's a pretty decent Corpse Gen from them. But also, they're going to give us 7 essence each, being with the Requiem. So we're just getting a free multiplier, which we'll go through in just a second, but also just the max essence to make sure we're hitting that 275 mark. Bone Prison is very important, especially because of the new boots, but this also is considered a minion, so every wall that it has. And currently with the new boots, they are 10 minions, so by casting Bone Prison, we get a 70 max essence from them. And then we go down just for the vulnerable, and I also like this because we get additional essence back just from having um, anything inside of the prison. Of course, we're just taking close enemies because most of the time we are close. I like move speed. We can dump a few more into here and get the cooldown, which for my current gear, I don't need it. My cooldown's fantastic. But I do have one into Decrepify, 3 into Amp damage for more damage, but this also gives us some DR, and it's really nice, and it also immediately activates our control glyph, and then 3 into move speed. Over here we've got our tendrils. With Bone Prison giving us the vulnerable, we do not need to take the plagued plagued corpse tendrils. We're taking the blighted. The blighted are going to give us a substantial amount of blood orbs on the ground. This is huge for keeping us very sustained. Lots of heals from it. Pits, it's even more impactful. For Fortify or Reapers, every time they create a corpse, we're going to get Fortified from that. And Fortify also goes towards our overpower damage. Bone Spirit, you want to dump absolutely as many ranks into this as we can. It's going to increase our damage. Going down the line, of course, we take that. And then we've got the Bone Spirit gives us essence back and generates essence on top. We take all 4 of our passives. This one is very important because this is going to give us 9 crit chance for the time we hit 300 max essence. And it's very important to maintain 100% crit chance because we do get the cooldown on our Bone Spirit by 7 seconds when you critically strike. Also in this, we're spending essence, we're getting cooldown. When we crit strike, we're getting additional crit strike damage to vuln enemies. And then over here, every time we crit strike, we're getting additional damage once we hit 10 of them. This is very good this season. Last season, I didn't take it because we just weren't critting that. I mean, 1 Bone Spirit every second is not that impactful when you're keeping that up, so we took the points elsewhere. But for this season, it's very impactful because our boots, the splinters that come from those boots, give you the additional crits there as well to keep this going very active. 2 into Inspiring Leader to make sure my crit chance is up. Bone Storm for the DR as well as the crit chance. And then the Ossified Essence. This one's huge also because for every point over, we're getting an additional multiplier here. So this is a huge multiplier for us, even unbuffed. And as you see here, it's 84.8. And as soon as I cast one single Bone Prison, this shoots up and it's going to scale upwards because of our splinters, and went up to 100, almost 130 percent multiplier. So this is a massive multiplier for us. It's very important to maintain that high essence. And when you're in combat with Bone Graft going and Bone Prison going and Requiem going, you have a substantial amount of max essence, which is going to give you more crit strike chance, which is going to give you more crit damage, or more damage overall from this. Now the other thing with Bone Spirit is with our max essence. So each point of max essence we have, we get a 4% multiplier on top of that. So it's super important to have, again, max essence, max essence, max essence. So that covers the skills themselves. Now let's look at the gear. So as I stated again, the whole build is centered around this, keeping the 275 max essence. And the ways you're going to get that is, first and foremost, you're going to have your Requiem circle or Requiem aspect. And what this is doing, every minion you have out is giving you 7 additional essence. So again, those 10 from the Bone Prison give you 70, plus you've got these 4 for an additional 28. So just from that, from one single cast of Bone Prison, not including the boots, and we'll talk about those in a second, just having our minions out plus Bone Prison is 98 max essence. A lot of people ask, how do I get to that max essence? So if you see here, we're at 226 just the way we're standing now. We don't have a potion. We do have a single crit on our max resource here. We also have max resource on our helmet. Ideally, you're going to want to hit at minimum 2 crits here. The more max essence you have, the more damage you do, the more sustain you have on that uptime, the more likely that you are not to miss your 275 because of how much max essence you have. And so if you watch here, so we're at 226, and as soon as we cast a single Bone Prison, that shoots us up and it's going to start scaling. So one Bone Prison gets us over the mark, and as we keep the Bone Prison up, it's going to keep scaling. And you can double stack these, so it keeps going. So as long as you maintain that. But the biggest question I get about this entire build is, how do we get the essence? So again, the 2 pieces that you have the max essence are going to be your Offhand and your helmet. And then Bone Prison, keeping it up as much as possible, is going to be huge for sustaining that 275. Also, you get your, as you're going through, you get your Bone Graft going, and increases damage and also maximum essence for every time you hit something, so that just keeps it going. The longer you're in combat, the more you keep that up, the more you get your Dominate Glyph going, which keeps damage going on overpowered targets. So that's where you're going to keep that from. Alright, you also get a multiplier from this for overpowered damage. It's a huge multiplier, paired with the multiplier also from our pants that now go up to 150. Our overpower multiplier is massive. It's very important to keep your cooldown. Shaco in itself, the new changes to Shaco gives us that ability. For our rings, the rings are one of the most important temper slots on the build. So I want to talk about the stats for just a second. So if you look at my stats currently, without buffs, without being in combat really, other than my minions doing some things, I have over 3,000 additive damage, which means any additive damage that we get into this build is not that impactful. So when you're looking at your tempers, sure, we need the Bone Spirit damage. Great, we get that there. We get it on our gloves. We get it on both rings. So yeah, it's just more additional additive damage to this build. So it's not that impactful. A lot of our tempers are just not that impactful. However, our rings are. The rings are the most important temper on this build. Making sure you get your casting macabre skills restores essence. So every time that you cast your Bone Spirit, that counts as a macabre. Your Bone Prison counts as a macabre. So if you're looking at, and you're going through the combat, and you're looking at how to keep that up, just Bone Spirit and one single Bone Prison keeps that essence up all the way. There's no question about that. So one of the other things on these rings, it is important to note that we don't have the same regen that we had last season, because we've lost 2 separate slots that had regen. Previously, Shaco had Essence Gen on it. Also, our Banished Lords had Essence Gen on it, so we had additional regen from that. And one thing you'll notice that is different is the aspects from last season to this. I'm not using Torment at all. And the way that works is because our cooldown's so high, we're able to keep Bone Prison up, which means we got the Macabre, and then also the Essence on Kill. When the Bone Prison dies, counts as you killing it, so you get all that times 10. So currently, right now, I'm sitting at 9. Where's my 9 Essence on Kill? So every time my Bone Prison dies, I get 90 Essence back immediately. So on top of getting the Essence back from casting it from the Macabre, as soon as it dies, we get that back. And most of the time, this is stacking. If you look at the way the cooldowns work, it's still up. And as soon as I cast it, we get both the on cast and the death triggers. So that's why it's important to have your Macabres. Because every time you cast Bone Spirit itself and Bone Prison, it's going to give you those Macabre triggers. For your offhand, I am now speccing into Bone Storm duration. The reason for this is with our current life pool, it is a massive barrier on top of our Fortify, so we've got a huge hit point pool of over 200,000 currently. If we use a resource potion, we're at almost 250,000 hit point pool, so it's pretty substantial. Which again, the overpower gets the additive damage from your life as well. I've been playing around with this. Right now, I am fine without the cooldown reduction. You can slot in, and again, for me, going through this with the Hordes, more HP, more survivability is more important than having a little more damage because the mobs just still get one shot. And going through even T8s and groups, so 4-man, I'm able to kill, typically I'm able to kill my single council member before the other 3 are killing theirs. Depending on their specs, rogues are a little different, but the other builds, I'm pretty much being able to keep up with 2 to 3 other players on theirs. So having more HP to survive is more impactful than a little more damage. Now, the other important thing to note here is, again, you do want your max resource, and you want to be able to get at least two tempers or 2 masterworking crits. If you can get 3, awesome. If not, it's okay. But again, the other part of this is just more additive damage. Now, the other new feature of this build is going to be the track boots. This one's huge. Couple of things with this. I'm glad they put armor on it because it does give us the additional roll of armor where we don't have to put it on our chest per se or any of the other pieces. We can reach our maximum armor cap without having to slot it in, especially if you're using Shaco because we also get the armor there and we are well over armor cap. So a couple things with this. You see here that you've got the Bone Prison traps targets. So every time one of those splinters hits, you're going to get 2 max essence on top of the regen from the splinters. And you want to make sure here. Now I have opted into the Bone Prison cooldown because I'm using the Bone Prison as my main essence gen since I'm not using Torment. I don't have a lot of the essence per second. So being able to cast and recast and kill and recast Bone Prison allows for a substantial amount of essence management. So that's pretty much how the build works. And so to recap, the first important thing is your max essence, and the way you achieve that is going to be from your max essence on your hat and your offhand. Also, casting Bone Prison before you start the fight is going to make sure that your first cast is going to have 275 essence to be able to activate your Banished Lords. And the other important thing to note is you do need to have 100% crit chance, because it enables not just your passives, but it also enables Bone Spirit itself to cast to reset its own cooldown by 7 seconds. As you see, every time we cast that, it's very important because it's getting our cooldown immediately, which allows that one to crit because my essence was too low. But once your essence is full and you're maintaining your essence, you got the crit chance. One other thing to note that's still happening with rapid ossification with Bone Spirit is rapid ossification is still being stored by spending. So if you watch here, get my cooldowns going. Once you cast Bone Spirit, you have those stored, and you can see here, especially for Bone Prison, we're losing the cooldown just by casting Decrepify. Still bugged, it still works this way, but this is going to be the most effective way to continue getting the cooldowns going. So one thing to note here is when you're using this build, you can reset your cooldowns by casting 2 Decrepifies, and it will give you the full uptime on Bone Prison by the time your next cast is ready and your full essence. So The gameplay loop is pretty simple. Again, you're going to want to cast Bone Spirit, cast Decrepifies, get your cooldown on Bone Prison, cast Bone Prison, then Spirit to Decrepifies, and just keep going and weave in your Tendrils when they're up, as well as your Consume Corpse to make sure you're getting them optimal damage, keeping Fueled by Death up, and Flesh Eater. And as you see, even that little clip there, 6 billion plus damage with the tanky setup. So it's pretty substantial for the tanky setup. But overall, this build functions incredibly well. And if you have any questions, just let me know.